Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Raymond Yeung. Our top stories tonight. COVID cases in Hong Kong surged past 1,100, the highest since the pandemic began. The city's biggest bus operator reports huge financial losses, but pledges not to sack workers or raise fares. And worshippers flock to temples, and business booms for salons on the eve of a 2-week closure. Hong Kong's daily COVID caseload has made another massive jump, exceeding 1,000 for the first time. Health authorities urged people to avoid using overloaded public emergency services in government hospitals. Yeung reports.
Hong Kong registered 1,161 COVID cases today, almost double yesterday's tally, marking another exponential jump in the caseload. Health authorities continue to blame the increase on large family gatherings over the Lunar New Year holidays. They also highlighted outbreaks in a number of homes for the elderly. In Sha Tin, all 50 residents on the first floor of the Synod Wang Siu Ching Renish Home for the Elderly were evacuated and quarantined after one resident and an employee tested positive. Elsewhere, a resident of One Lun Home for the Elderly in Sham Shui Po died, reportedly from COVID. There were 2 COVID-related deaths in public hospitals, the first in 6 months. One was a 73-year-old chronically ill man who had 2 COVID jabs. He was admitted to the Caritas Medical Center, where his condition quickly deteriorated. The other fatality was also a Caritas Medical Center patient, a 76-year-old unvaccinated man. The chief manager of the hospital authority, Larry Lee, said 5 other patients were in critical or serious condition in various hospitals. All of them are over 50 years old, and 2 have not received jabs. Lee said emergency departments in several public hospitals are severely overloaded and called on people to stay away if possible. With over 800 preliminary positive cases today, tomorrow's numbers are expected to remain high. The government also announced it is extending a lockdown on Leung Kit House in Leung King Estate. Up to 70 preliminary cases have been discovered in the Tuen Mun building since it was first sealed off on Sunday night. Sewage samples also continue to test positive for the virus. Wang, HKIBC.
KMB says it's been losing $200 million a month since the Omicron outbreak started in December. But the city's biggest bus operator promised not to sack employees, reduce their salaries, or increase fares. Chloe Feng reports.
Stay home and reduce travel is the government's latest slogan as it struggles to contain the Omicron crisis. But it comes at a heavy price for the services industry, including transport. Nighttime train services are being cut because of lower patronage. Bus operators are also feeling the pinch. KMB, the city's largest franchised bus operator, said passenger numbers have plunged 40% since December, and it's been losing $200 million a month. But KMB's assistant head of communications and public services, Lam Ziho, reassured employees that they will not be sacked, face a pay cut, or ordered to take unpaid leave. Ho said fares will not be increased either, adding that the firm will enhance the cleanliness of its buses to keep passengers safe. New World First Bus and City Bus, meanwhile, predicted a loss of $60 million this month, up from $40 million in January, and urged the government to help the industry weather the storm. Chloe Feng, HKIBC.
A top advisor of the chief executive says he's very optimistic Hong Kong can open up within a year. Bernard Chan's statement comes after the government imposed its toughest round of measures yet. Wang has the story.
A day after Hong Kong announced its harshest set of curbs, Executive Councillor Bernard Chan assured there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Optimistic or pessimistic that this could open up within the next year?
I am very optimistic.
But Chan repeated the government line that a 90% vaccination rate must be reached first, a figure that continues to be stunted by a low rate among the elderly.
The so-called 80% of Hong Kong got vaccinated already. They felt very unfair to them. They've done everything they can, and yet they're still being penalized, just like everyone else. I think, in fact, the announcement yesterday is pretty much almost like an ultimatum now. We're going to push this final bit because we can't afford it. We have to open back up to the world.
Chan clarified that the government's dynamic zero policy does not mean it's aiming for absolutely zero cases.
We'll do everything we can to control and contain it, which is different from some of the policies used and adopted overseas, where they kind of gave up and lived with the virus. I don't think we can ever go into a full lockdown. We just can't do it in Hong Kong. We cannot have the same sort of lockdown you see in the mainland.
Chan said the government's next objective is to shorten quarantine time for incoming travelers. Asked whether it's Beijing or the SAR government calling the shots, he said it's the city's own domestic issue when it comes to pandemic approach. But if people want to cross the border without quarantine, Hong Kong must meet mainland requirements. Wenna Wong, HKIBC.
Staff of online news site HK01 have been ordered to evacuate their office after one person tested preliminary positive for COVID. According to an internal memo, the suspected patient was last at work on Saturday. All employees, apart from those in the editorial department, need to leave the building in Tsuen Wan. The office will be fully disinfected. People who work on the same floor, as well as their close contacts, will be given rapid test kits. They will not be allowed back unless they test negative. Barbers did a roaring trade today before they put away their scissors for the next 2 weeks. Places of worship were also packed before they shut their doors tomorrow. Chloe Fong reports.
Many people dashed to places of worship today before they close for 2 weeks, starting tomorrow as Hong Kong battles the 5th COVID wave. This woman said it will be her last chance in a fortnight to worship at the Wang Tai Sing Temple. This person complained about the rigid measures, arguing that as a free society, Hong Kong should value freedom. She added that a vaccine pass is out of the question for those who cannot get jabbed because of physical or medical concerns. This man, who claimed to be an atheist, said he had come to the temple for blessings as the city is awash with fear and panic. Although the temple was crowded, people were not worried about being infected because they had either been vaccinated or taken preventive measures. Also packed were barbershops and salons across the city, with queues already forming last night. One customer said he had waited for over 2 hours to get a haircut at a salon in Yunman Square in Kwun Tong. Another man said in the worst-case scenario, he would crop his own hair, but he had doubts about the result. Some salon owners denounced the mandatory closure as ridiculous and expect their income this month to be only 10% of their usual earnings. Industry representatives expect substantial losses, which they say cannot be offset by the latest round of relief funds. Chloe Fong, HKIBC.
2 former Cathay Pacific Flight attendants have been granted bail when they appeared in court charged with flouting medical surveillance rules in December at the start of the Omicron outbreak. Wong Yun Long and Nielsen Lau, both in their 40s, were not required to enter a plea in Eastern Court. Magistrate Jason Wan granted them bail of $5,000 each on condition that they do not leave the city. and report to police every week. The case was adjourned to April 7th. A former student leader has been found guilty of resisting police and obstructing justice during his arrest in 2019. But Keith Fong was acquitted of a more serious charge of possessing offensive weapons after he was caught with 10 laser pens. In a rare demonstration back in August 2019, police shown what they called a laser gun at a newspaper from a short distance. The paper started smoldering, showing the device's potential danger. The laser gun, commonly known as a laser pen, was seized from Keith Fong, then student union chief at Baptist University. He was arrested in Sham Shui Po for carrying 10 of those devices. On top of possession of offensive weapons, Fong was later charged with resisting police and obstruction of justice for wiping the content on his phone shortly after his arrest. Today, District Judge Douglas Yao found the 23-year-old not guilty of the first charge, but convicted him of the other two. Yao said while it was very suspicious for Fong to have bought 10 laser pens, he was not near a protest site and the devices had no batteries. Therefore, it was hard to deduce the actual purpose of the pointers, the judge said. But Yao concluded police officers had reasonable grounds to approach Fong, who tried to run away and break free with force. He also ruled that Fong was the only person able to erase the content on his phone before it was seized by police. The act undoubtedly hindered investigation, the judge added. He remanded Fong until March the 3rd for sentencing. And coming up after the break, presidential hopefuls in the Philippines launched their campaigns. And a California university agrees to pay $250 million to settle sexual abuse claims.